All right, Muslims before Islam. Imagine the Prophet ﷺ is not born yet, and you are in the early or mid 6th century. There is some people around who might be considered Muslims, even though the religion of Islam, as we know it today, is not established yet. How is that even possible? Now, these Muslims are not going to be fasting 30 days. They're not going to be praying 5 times a day and giving charity and all that. Those are teachings of Islam that came later. Those are specific details. But the fundamental thing that we have to think about is their belief. The most important thing in Islam is not to take partners with God, is to believe in one God and not to take partners beside him, and then to believe in all the previous prophets and the revelations, etc. The most important thing, again, is to not take partners and to believe in one God who created us. Now, since we have a lot of information about the history of the Prophet, peace be upon him, even before he was born, we know that his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, was one of those who might considered Muslims. Since Abdul Muttalib was one of the leaders of Quraysh, one of the caretakers of the city of Mecca, he himself was not worshipping idols. He only prayed to Allah, to God himself. He never prayed to idols around, even though he was taking care of the pilgrims, the people who came all from all around the world to bring in new idols, new deities, and to worship those. He himself never participated in that pagan worship. Abdul Muttalib received some kind of revelation. Yes, even though he was not a prophet or a messenger, he had a vision where he saw a man coming to him and ask him to dig a specific area in Mecca to bring back the long lost well of Zamzam, which we still have today in Saudi Arabia. There were other people who never participated in that kind of worship, like for example, the first wife of the Prophet ﷺ, Khadija, never worshipped idols as well. And that makes sense. When the Prophet came back to her, when he received the first revelation, when the angel Gabriel come to him for the first time, she was the first one to become Muslim because she was already not engaged in idol worshipping. And this actually reminds me of a hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he said, every single one of us, when he's born a Muslim. Meaning he's already prepared to accept the message of monotheism, the message of Islam, to enter Islam, unless his parents made him a Christian, made him an atheist, or made him a pagan. But if the parents do not interfere, then that kid, that man or a woman will be accepting Islam easily, because that's the nature of us. That's the nature of every single human being, to accept Islam, to accept that there is one God who created us. And guess what? Not all religions can make the same claim. Like, for example, Christians cannot say every human is born a Christian. No one in his right mind would hear the Trinity, for example. God is three in one, and we're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. No one. You have to explain and have this philosophy. Like, even today, Christians, they cannot answer the Trinity, the dilemma of the Trinity. There is this one more character that I come across, and his story is interesting. His name is Zayd ibn Amr. And he existed during the same time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, before the Prophet received any revelation. And this guy was known to hate the pagan practices. He hated worshiping idols, to the point where he was attacking the people who worshipped idols in the mosque of Kaaba. The interesting part was that he proclaimed that he was following the religion of Abraham, yet he was not a Christian and he was not a Jew. And what happened to him was his uncle Al-Khattab, which is the father of Umar, the caliph, prosecuted him. He made him leave Mecca because of what he was doing, disturbing the peace. So what he did was he was traveling around through Iraq, Syria, and he was asking every single monk or rabbi he encountered in his way, and he asked him about the religion of Abraham. Until one day he encountered this monk who told him that this is the time where a prophet should appear from the Arab land. And it was the same city where he was coming from, Mecca. But unfortunately, when he was going back to Mecca, he got attacked in the way and he got killed. So he died. And when the Prophet, peace be upon him, heard about his story, he said about him, On the day of resurrection, he will be raised as having in himself alone the worth of all people. Look, the point of this story is that just because you're born, you find yourself in a society that worships idols, or maybe you find yourself that you have a family that worships, a man, Christianity, Judaism, atheism, or even Islam, does not mean you have to inherit that belief. Do not follow a religion just because you find your parents on it. Even the Quran tells us not to follow a belief just because your parents following that belief. And it tells you, what if they didn't know better? In the second chapter, verse 170, God says, when it is said to them, follow what Allah has revealed, they reply, no, we only follow what we found our forefathers practicing. Would they still do so even if their forefathers had absolutely no understanding or guidance? This is a straightforward message to all people who follow a faith without even thinking about it. You're just following a faith, you're just following a religion because your family is following the same religion, because your society is following the same religion. That's not how it works. Religion is not something that is inherited. Religion is something that you have to think about and you have to be convinced by, and it should be nothing but the truth, which is the religion of Islam, the only true religion